Good morning to all of you. So today we are going to study a new topic, that is hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. Now the definition is HIE or hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. It is a type of brain dysfunction that occurs when the brain doesn't receive enough oxygen or the blood flow for a period of time. Okay. So the basic issue here is lack of oxygen. So when lack of oxygen is there, this usually occurs when there is lack of blood flow, because we know the blood carries here RBCs contains oxyhemoglobin, and it is through blood each of our cells, including brain, they get the oxygen. Okay. So what is the meaning of these three terms? Hypoxic means not enough oxygen, ischemic means not enough blood flow, encephalopathy is a brain disorder due to these reasons, lack of oxygen. Okay. Now this is hypoxic is shortage of oxygen in the blood. What is ischemia? A shortage of blood flow to the brain, and the final result is resultant brain damage. Okay. So when you have less of oxygen and less of blood flow, and the result is you have encephalopathy or brain damage. Now what is the prevalence and incidence? It is 2 to 9 per 1000 live births, and now what we have is therapeutic hypothermia. Okay. So this therapeutic hypothermia has reduced the death and disability, but outcomes can still be severe. Okay. Now this is not ordinary hypothermia, but this is therapeutic hypothermia, means we are creating hypothermia. Till now we were talking about all newborn babies should be prevented from hypothermia, but in HIE what we do is we keep the baby in hypothermia. Okay. That too for 72 hours. I shall be talking about this in the later slides. Okay. So now we have therapeutic hypothermia, so which we give as a part of treatment, and this has reduced the death, significantly reduced the death rate. Okay. So now what we usually give is therapeutic hypothermia. Okay. So in one study, 50% of the children with HIE, either they had died or they had major neurodevelopment disability at 18 months. Okay. So at 1.5 years, when it was followed, so it was found that 50% of newborns with HIE had died or they had major disability. Okay. 40% of the study had normal early development. Okay, because the duration was for 18 months. So these are the findings of that. Then 1 million deaths per year is the death which is caused due to HIE. This is 24% of all neonatal deaths. Okay. So if 100 neonates are dying, 24 are due to HIE, and that is why 24% is a great figure. Okay. So neonatal HIE is a primary global medical concern. Now what is the pathophysiology? Okay. So here what we have is asphyxia. Okay. So when you have asphyxia, the issue is whatever amount of blood is available, so that is redistributed. The blood is redistributed to major organs, that is brain, heart and lungs. Okay. The first thing is asphyxia is there. Okay. So in asphyxia, the blood gets redistributed in brain, heart and lungs. So initially what happens is systemic blood pressure increases, and this, when systemic blood pressure increases, this increases CBF, that is cerebral blood flow. We know that brain's major part is cerebral. We have two cerebral hemisphere. Okay. So initially what happens is when you have more amount of blood being flowing to brain and heart. Okay. So when the heart pumps more amount of blood, so systemic blood pressure increases. So when systemic blood pressure increases, naturally the cerebral blood flow will also increase. Okay. But later what happens is, this is on an initial basis, but later this doesn't suffice for a long period of time. There is compromised cerebral function. Okay. Initially there is a slight increase in cerebral blood flow, but later there is compromised cerebral function, and there is inadequate cardiac output. Okay, this cardiac output, what is the formula? CO is equal to the amount of blood ejected by left ventricle, which is called as stroke volume, into the heart rate. So that is the formula for cardiac output. Okay, so we have inadequate cardiac output and compromised cerebral function. So these two things together will cause the brain to have anaerobic metabolism. Okay, so aerobic metabolism was there earlier. Aerobic metabolism, why? Because the blood flow was maintained. But now when asphyxia continues to take place, or whatever was the cause, we shall be studying about a cause. If you are unable to manage the cause, the final result is there is compromised cerebral function, there is inadequate cardiac output, and these two together, the issue is, see, suppose if you imagine, if the heart has to pump 100 ml in each injection, so instead of 100 ml it is ejecting only 60. Okay, so that is inadequate cardiac output. So final result will be less amount of blood. Okay, so when you have less amount of blood, naturally the blood which is reaching the brain also will be less. So when you have less blood reaching the brain, the cerebrum also will not be functioning properly. Okay, so because of these two reasons, what happens is the brain shifts from if you remember my class on shock when you were in first year, we have discussed this part now, that is aerobic. In cases of shock, what happens is the aerobic respiration shifts to anaerobic metabolism. Okay, so this is what is occurring here. Okay, we will continue with pathophysiology in the subsequent slides. Now what happens is, when you have anaerobic respiration, lactic acid is there. Now you understand all these things because we have already dealt earlier. And there is cell death. Why? Due to energy failure, there is free radical formation, calcium accumulation, etc. So all this causes cell death. Okay, so when anaerobic metabolism is there, this will lead to cell death. Okay, now after cell death, what happens is there is secondary reperfusion injury after 6 to 15 hours. See, initially the body starts to revive again, but there is fall of all these things which I have already discussed. Then what happens is there is again secondary, that is second time there is a reperfusion. Okay, so this further, so this occurs after 6 to 15 hours, and there is a brief period of restored cellular function. Okay, so when there is secondary reperfusion taking place after 6 to 15 hours, so there is brief period of the cellular function comes little bit to normal level. Okay, depending on how much secondary reperfusion is there. Okay, gradually what happens is, this is only for a few time. Okay, so finally there is decreased cerebral blood flow, and there is clinical deterioration due to calcium influx into the cell. So what happens is, clinically we see the sign and symptoms. I will be discussing what are the sign and symptoms. This occurs so when there is a reduced blood flow, the calcium which was extracellular gets inside the cell, and this causes all the different sign and symptoms. Okay, so I think you have understood the pathophysiology. I will just revise once again. So whenever you have asphyxia, the blood gets redistributed in the major organs, that is brain, heart and lung. So initially the systemic BP improves, and when systemic BP improves, the cerebral blood flow, CBF also improves, but this cannot be sustained for a long period of time. If the basic issue is not solved, there is compromised cerebral function and inadequate cardiac output, and because of these two reasons, the aerobic respiration of the brain is converted to anaerobic respiration, which causes lactic acid, which causes cell death, and secondary reperfusion occurs after 6 to 15 hours, and there is a brief period of restored cellular function, and finally the cerebral blood flow is decreased. The clinical presentation is there, that is clinical deterioration, or presentation I was talking about. These signs and symptoms are evident now. because of the calcium influx into the cell. Now is pathophysiology still continuing. That was a basic one. So brain injury in HI evolves after hours, days, or even months. Okay. So these signs and symptoms may continue even maybe for hours. See, this all depends on what cause is there and whether is it identified. Even if it is identified, is it solved or so this all depends on all these things. Okay, this can be for hours, maybe days, maybe for even months. So primary energy failure is still 6 hours. Okay, 6 hours after hypoxic ischemic injury. So after 6 hours, there is a latent phase. So this latent phase is 30 to 60 minutes after the primary energy failure. Okay, so this is after 6 hours. Another maybe half to 1 hour there will be latent phase, and then there is secondary energy failure. Okay, 7 to 72 hours after hypoxic ischemic centers. Okay, so this was 7. After latent phase, it is now 7 hours. So 7 hours to 3 days. So this might be the duration of secondary energy failure, and there is tertiary energy failure 72 hours from the onset of HI injury and may last for days to months. So this and tertiary energy continues to continue for days or months. Now can you see this? Perinatal hypoxia ischemia is there. So first there is primary cerebral energy failure. There is decreased cerebral blood flow. All these 6 I have already told you. There is decrease in oxygen substrates, and there is decrease in high energy phosphorylated compounds, and there is brain acidosis. We have already discussed. Now what is high energy phosphorylated compounds? So high energy phosphorylated compounds they provide energy for cellular functions. What are they? They provide energy for cellular functions. But the issue here is that gets reduced. When high energy phosphorylated compounds are decreased, so naturally cellular metabolism will not continue, and this will lead to brain acidosis. We have already discussed. So this is the time when we resuscitate the baby. Okay. So when we resuscitate, we may be successful, we may not be successful. If it is successful, then there is a resolution of hypoxia ischemia. That is, the cerebral metabolism is normal. Previously, it was lactic acidosis. Now it is the normal function of cerebral metabolism, restoring of the energy reserve. That is, the supply of high energy phosphorylated compounds gets improved. All these things are there. But in some cases, this is not there. So brain injury occurs. There is immediate neuronal death. Okay. Then after resuscitation, what happens is, if this issue is solved, naturally there will be no brain injury. But if it is not solved, then this may result in secondary cerebral energy failure. Okay. So there is further decrease in high energy phosphorylated compound, but there is no brain acidosis, and gradually this will lead to brain injury, and there will be delayed neuronal death. Okay. So this is delayed neuronal death is for hours, for months. So this continues. Okay. So this was all about asphyxia, and this is time. Okay. So as time advances, these are the changes which takes place. Okay. Now reasons why HI is typically not apparent immediately after birth. The reason is brain injury from HI is an evolving process. When the blood flow is cut off from parts of brain, cells begin to break down, die, and release substances which are toxic to other cells. So these cells then begin to die off and continue the chain reaction, which causes the brain injury to spread over the period of hours or days. And therapeutic hypothermia can disrupt this chain reaction. What it is, we have just now I was discussing with you the pathophysiology, and what we have studied is there is cell death. So whenever there is cell death, toxic substances are released. So when toxic substances are released, these toxic substances affect the nearby cells, and gradually a chain reaction. One cell affects the other, second cell affects the third cell. So gradually this continues. Okay, this continues, and this continues to spread for a period of hours or maybe days. And if there is therapeutic hypothermia, then this chain reaction means spreading of the toxic effects of cell death from one cell to other. So that so that can be disrupted by giving therapeutic hypothermia. I was talking about it, that we keep the baby in hypothermia for treatment. Next is damage from HI can occasionally not become apparent until the child is developed. Many a times the child we do not even know that these things are there. We come to know when the child milestones, there is delayed milestone. For example, it impacts the immobility which may not be noticed till the child struggles to meet the milestones such as crawling or walking. So because the development delays, then we come to know that the child is was a case of HIE. Now what are the causes? We have many causes of HIE. See, we keep in mind the basic issue. There is lack of blood flow, there is lack of oxygen, and that is the basic issue. Now all those causes which can cause this lack of oxygen and lack of blood supply are causes of HIE. Now what are this? First is mismanagement of high risk pregnancy. Okay, so women with conditions such as preeclampsia and gestational diabetes, they require extensive monitoring and treatment. We know that when you have gestational diabetes, there is macrosomia, and the baby we usually have a planned cesarean section. Okay, preeclampsia, again you have hypertension, and whenever you have hypotension, there is vasoconstriction. The amount of blood flow to the fetus may be reduced. Okay, so that is why we have IUGR babies in preeclampsia. So if high risk pregnancies are mismanaged, this can be caused. Second is umbilical cord. We know that umbilical cord is the basic lifeline to provide oxygen. So anything which causes problem for the umbilical cord, this can cause HIE. Okay, so anything that compress, we have talked about cord prolapse if it is not managed properly, or if the position of the fetus is such that it is compressing the fetal cord. So all these things, any complications which causes problem for umbilical cord are causes of HIV. Next is placental or uterine complications. Okay, the placenta and uterus plays a very important part in providing oxygen. We know the placenta is adherent to the uterine wall, and they play a very important role, placenta as well as uterus. Okay, now what are those things? The first is abruptio placenta, placental abruption. So this occurs when the placenta separates from the uterus before the baby is born. So that is abruptio placentae. And what is placenta previa? Placenta previa is the placenta is very close to the cervix. Okay, so this can cause bleeding unexpectedly. Okay, so whenever heavy bleeding is there, then naturally the oxygen is deprived from the to the fetus. Next is placental insufficiency. The placenta is made in such a way that it cannot provide oxygen to the baby. So this placental insufficiency may be the cause. Next is if the uterus gets ruptured. See, placenta is adherent to the uterine wall, but if the uterus gets ruptured, then maybe a partial rupture or maybe a complete rupture, naturally the fetus is going to be badly affected. Next causes are infections. Okay, so infections in the mother can spread to the baby during delivery, and especially if the medical team doesn't take adequate precautions. Okay, infections are one of the major cause, and what is such as doing indicated, and if you don't take precautions, that is doing indicated infection screening and prescribe antibiotic as and when required. So if there is any issue of infection, that has to be properly treated. If you don't do it, then this can be causes of HIE. Then is improper fetal heart monitoring. Okay, so we all of you have worked in labor room. All the people are all the pregnant ladies who are there are regularly monitored for fetal heart rate. Okay, so if there is fetal distress, or on the fetal heart monitor, we have fetal heart monitor, and if there is increase in the rise in FHS, or maybe less, or if there is less movement, or if there is frequent movements, so these are all signs of fetal distress. Okay, so we have to identify the signs of fetal distress, and oxygen supply has to be restored. Then the baby has to be taken for emergency cesarean section. But if this monitoring is sporadic means you take FHS once in the morning until evening you have not taken. In such conditions, when you don't have a frequent FHS recording, then we can miss this. Okay, so if the monitoring is sporadic means very few, or if it is not at all occurring, then we may not even know that we are missing fetal heart fetal distress. Then is failure to prevent a preterm babies. Okay, so preterm babies are naturally at a higher risk of HIE because their lungs are underdeveloped. See here, what we have a baby is in HIE the amount of oxygen is less, and on the top of it, if the lungs are not functioning properly, naturally the issue will be of great concern. Okay, so it is very important. We have to take all measures to reduce the chances of preterm delivery, and if the cervix is opening too fast, then we can do a cervical cerclage. Okay, and we can also give progesterone treatment. The role of progesterone helps the uterus to grow during pregnancy and also prevents from contraction. So if you give progesterone, we have two things. One is the contraction is reduced, and the uterus is also growing properly. So the chances of having a preterm delivery is reduced to a great extent. And next is allowing prolonged labor to continue. So labor is stressful, and because the uterine contraction, so whenever uterine contraction is there, it compresses both the placenta as well as the umbilical cord. Okay, so if something is preventing the labor from progressing, and if you don't have the progress of labor as it is anticipated, then there has to be an emergency cesarean section. Okay, but if it is not done, then this causes negligence, and this can be a major cause of HIV. Okay, so prolonged labor is more likely to occur. So if the baby is too big, then the baby cannot come out. Second is baby is all right, but the pelvis is too small. Again, this can cause a prolonged labor. Next is medication problems. Okay, so some physician, what they do, issue is they prescribe pitocin and cytotec. So we give this to induce labor. Okay, but sometimes what happens is uterine contractions, they become so strong and so frequent that the oxygen deprivation can be there. Okay, so that is why we don't give syntestosterone on a high dosage. We start with 5 units and gradually increase depending on the requirement. Next is mismanagement of a neonatal condition. Okay, so hypoxic ischemic injury can be complications in the neonatal period, that is the first month of life. Problems such as respiratory distress, jaundice, hypoglycemia, these all can cause HIE, especially if these are mismanaged. Now, what are the signs and symptoms of HIE? First is the baby will be floppy and unreactive to sounds or light, or they may be very reactive, more reactive than the normal babies to sights and sound. There will be breathing problem, then feeding problem because of weak muscles in the mouth and throat, missing reflexes. Sometimes the baby will not be responding to loud noises. Seizures can be there. Apgar score will be reduced. There will be low or maybe high muscle tone. The consciousness level is changed, and there are signs of organ dysfunction, especially of heart, lungs, and kidneys, because the blood supply to these areas is reduced. Now we'll come to the treatment part. I will first take what is the criteria for therapeutic hypothermia. If you have a baby with HIE, which are the babies which are selected for this therapeutic hypothermia is this cannot be given to preterm, has to be term babies more than 37 weeks, and history of acute perinatal event and are exhibiting signs of moderate to severe HIE. Now we have how to identify whether it is a mild or moderate. In the later slides, I will be showing you about Sarnath criteria. Okay, I will be teaching you there. And neonatal pH is less than 7. There is a base deficit greater than 16 on a cord gas or a postnatal gas. Okay, so base difference is reduced. It is greater than 16 in ABG analysis, and Apgar score is less than 5 at 10 minutes. Okay, we usually take at 1 and 5 minutes, but at 10 minutes the Apgar score is still less than 5. So these are the indications for therapeutic hypothermia. So what is therapeutic hypothermia? Immediate treatment of infants born with HIV involves cooling the baby for 3 days. It is for 72 hours we do this. Okay. So this is a baby with therapeutic hypothermia. Can you see this baby? So it is shown that if the brain is cooled just a few degrees below, and what is the degree? 33.5 to plus minus 0.5 degrees centigrade, to be decrease the temperature to this one. Okay. And then after 3 days, then the temperature is taken back to the normal level. Okay, so it has been found that there is less brain injury. So 3 days the baby is placed on a cooling blanket, and then the baby is given medications. Okay, so medication to rest, and also we also monitor very closely about any signs of discomfort. Okay. And after the cooling period, the baby will be slowly rewarmed. We don't rewarm very suddenly. What happens is, again, this causes brain damage. So whenever the baby, after rewarming, the baby is brought back to the normal temperature, but on a gradual basis, not suddenly. So while caring for the baby, they monitor his or her heart rate, breathing pattern, temperature. The vitals has to be monitored. And apart from that, we take an EEG and cerebral function monitor, and small probes are placed on the scalp to measure the electrical activity, and we look for seizures by using a video camera. Okay, and blood tests are given to find out whether some infections are there, whether metabolic issues are there or not. Okay. Now, what are the nursing intervention? Clustering care to avoid excess stimulation. We don't want excessive stimulation. So whatever care you want to give is you bring it together, do it at one time, and then we leave the baby. We decrease the sound and light in the immediate area. Frequent skin assessment has to be done. Why? Because we are inducing hypothermia, so assessment has to be done. Pain assessment and management also has to be done. Okay. Now the treatment is still continuing. Therapeutic hypothermia lasts around 72 hours. Okay, and the metabolic rate will be low. Then this prevents further damage known as reperfusion injury. Okay, if you remember the pathophysiology, there is secondary reperfusion injury. Okay, so this reperfusion injury occurs when the normal oxygen and blood flow are restored too quickly to the brain cells. Okay, so that is why this injury word is there, reperfusion. But if it is done on a gradual basis, it is okay. But if it is done very fast, then reperfusion will cause injury. Okay, this damages the brain cell. So what it may seem as counterintuitive that restoring blood flow could further injury, the brain cells react differently to rapid oxygenation after being oxygen deprived. Okay, so there was a state of oxygen deprivation, but when you give oxygen, then it has to be on a gradual basis, because the brain reacts on a different manner. Okay, so rapid oxygenation can cause more inflammation and release of certain harmful chemicals. So this has to be prevented. And hypothermia works to stabilize the brain cells and limits the damaging inflammation. So this is how the baby is kept in a cool blanket. Okay, the head is covered like this. Okay, so this is how when the baby is kept in the cool blanket. Now, apart from therapeutic hypothermia, we have to give supportive care. We have to facilitate the breathing. We have to control the seizures. We have to manage the blood sugar. Antibiotics has to be given to reduce brain swelling. Depending on the exhibiting signs and symptoms, we decide. Okay, and different therapies are there. Okay, which can minimize the symptoms and maximize the function. Okay. So these therapies are supporting the heart and maintaining healthy blood pressure. We sustain the kidney and liver function. Mechanical ventilation is given to the baby if baby is unable to pull. Then then baby seizures are also managed. And treatment focuses on helping the child to adapt to symptoms which are caused by injury. Okay, so we have different occupational therapies, medical and physical therapies, to help the child in these therapies. Now we have types and forms of HIE. So this is by Sarnath staging, and according to that we have grade 1, 2 and 3. Okay. Now these are Sarnath staging. These are the parameters: alertness, muscle tone, seizures, pupils, respiration, duration. And mild, the child will be hyper alert, muscle tone may be normal or decreased, seizures will not be there, the pupils will be dilated and reactive, respiration will be regular, and the duration will be less than 24 hours. Okay. Between 2 to 4 days, the baby will be lethargic, hypotonia, the seizures will be frequent, the pupils will be small and reactive to light, respiration will be periodic. Okay. But in grade 3, the baby will be in coma, the baby will have flaccid muscles, seizures are uncommon, and the pupils may be having different sizes or it may be fixed. There will be apnea, and this continues for weeks together. Okay. So this was Sarnath staging. Now there is a relationship between HIE and cerebral palsy. So cerebral palsy is a motor dysfunction caused by brain damage. Here also brain damage is there because of its motor dysfunction. Okay. HIE is a form of brain damage that kills the neuron that transfer the motor signals. Okay. So in HIE there is brain damage because we were talking about brain cells. So when neurons are injured, so it is through neurons the motor signals are transmitted. So that is no longer there. And cerebral palsy is a disorder that manifests itself in motor difficulties such as muscle spasms or coordination difficulties. So this is the issue of cerebral palsy. And HIE can cause cerebral damage that causes cerebral palsy. Okay. So if HIE is there, it can cause cerebral palsy. Okay. So these are the relationship between HIE and cerebral palsy. Now what is the prognosis? With now we have mild, moderate and severe. For mild, according to Sarnath scale, the normal outcome. Mild babies with mild symptoms have a normal outcome, and with severe mortality rate is 75%, and 80% of those who survive will have neurological sequelae. Okay. Or complications. Okay. And percentage wise, mild is 39%, moderate is 39%, and severe is 22%. Okay. And management and outcome will vary vary significantly with grade of HIE. Okay. So depending on which grade it is, is it mild, is it moderate or severe, depending on that, the management and outcome will differ from one child to the other. And with moderate HIE, 1/3 will develop clinical or electrographic seizures in the neonatal period. Okay. So if it is moderate HIV, then the chances of having the seizures is increased. Now we have a dyskinetic cerebral palsy and spastic quadriplegia are the most common subtypes, with 80% of dyskinetic CP attributable to perinatal hypoxia-ischemia at term. So if you have babies who are born at term, but if there is perinatal hypoxic ischemia, which is the cause of this HIE, so this can cause dyskinetic CP or cerebral palsy or spastic quadriplegia. Now what is dyskinetic CP? This is also called as athetoid, ATHETOID, athetoid cerebral palsy or athetoid TB. So here what we have is there is trouble controlling the muscle movement. Okay, so there will be the muscle movement will not be able to control. Okay, so there will be twitching and there will be abnormal movement in dyskinetic cerebral palsy. But if it is a spastic cerebral palsy, okay, in spastic cerebral palsy, this is also called as ataxic. So there is stiff muscles, and there will be problems of balance and walking. Okay, but in dyskinetic CP there will be abnormal movement, but in this spastic quadriplegia there will be stiff muscles and abnormal movements will be reduced to a minimum. Okay. So rates of hearing loss is 17.1%. Okay, and up to 41% of the infants with a diagnosis of HIE have an abnormality in some element of visual function in the first year of life. So those babies who are having HIE, 41% of the babies will have some visual issues. Okay, so therapeutic hypothermia has improved the outlook. Okay, so because of it, there is increased likelihood of survival of neonates, as well as there is improved survival without neurological deficit. So that much is the advantage of therapeutic hypothermia. Okay. So that was all about the class on HIE. I hope you have understood. So thank you for a patient listening.